Okay, Tim, you've mentioned that it's actually quite easy and it's not really a daunting place for a novice punter when they come racing, rather than bet with the total or whatever, get involved with the bookies. What would be a little bit of advice you would give the novice punter when betting with the racecourse bookies?
Well, I think you need to look for value. So don't just go to the first bookmaker that you see. Always shop around, just as you would in any walk of life. Shop around for the best deal for yourself. So if you see a bookmaker that's the nearest one to you is offering 5-1, have a look at the board next door. It might be 6-1. You don't know these things. It's always worth checking, and of course the bigger the odds you get, the bigger the return you get on your bet if and when you win. So I think that's an important thing to bear in mind.
And what would be the biggest do's and don'ts for a novice punter?
Well, the biggest do is be very careful when you're placing your bets. Make sure that you speak to the bookmaker clearly and you listen to the read back, which is in effect the bookmaker telling the clerk what the bet is. And then importantly, check your ticket. I've mentioned this before, but please do check your ticket to make sure that all the details are correct. That's a very important thing. And then hang on to your ticket until the weighed-in announcement has been made on the racecourse, because even if your horse comes second, then just sometimes there's a steward's inquiry. Your stewards look into the race and the horse can be promoted from second to first or fourth to third or whatever it may be, and your bet from being a loser all of a sudden becomes a winner, and it's very difficult to, it's not impossible, but it makes it more difficult to claim if your bet is screwed up and in a bin or ripped up and on the floor.
Okay, there's been a bit of talk recently because the betting ring appears to be less busy, especially at midweek meetings, than it was back 20 years ago or what have you. We were talking previously off camera and you have a few ideas that maybe bookmakers are sort of trying up their game a bit. Do you want to tell us a bit about them?
Yeah, well, I was looking at some statistics on the Gambling Commission's website actually earlier on, and I saw that in 2008 the on-course horse race turnover was 279 million, and in 2017 was 228 million. So that's a decrease of 18.3% over the last 10 years up until last year. And if you take into account inflation, that's down in real terms by 38%. So turnover down 38% in 10 years for the on-course bookmakers. That's an illustration of how tough it is out there, and in particular at the, as you say, the midweek meetings. Quite a few bookmakers still attend. Bookmaker attendances are not going down, despite what some people may think. There's around 42,000 bookmaker attendances every year, and that's been constant for 3 or 4 years. So it is tough out there for the bookmakers, and they're chasing a reducing amount of turnover. I think, as I said earlier, one of the important things is to somehow get across to people that it's not difficult to bet in the betting ring. It's not scary. Bookmakers are not scary people. This is the image put around, if you like. It's the stereotypical image of the adversarial nature of the relationship between bookmaker and customer, where the bookmaker wants to win every penny that the customer's staking with him, and the customer's desperate to have one over on the bookmaker. I don't see, I can understand why it exists. I don't see the need for that level of adversity in the relationship between bookmaker and punter. The fact of the matter is that punters do have to win, because if bookmakers retained all of the stakes, then nobody would ever bet with them. So punters do have to win. I think bookmakers pay them out with a smile. It's a much more welcoming place in the betting ring these days. There's a lot more ladies who are working the betting ring, for instance, and that makes it more welcoming, I think, from a customer point of view. And bookmakers do try to offer good service. It's not the days when bookmakers would growl at people, and I'm sure it might happen once in a blue moon from time to time, but those days have gone. It's a friendly place to be, and it's a place where you can enjoy your race day more.
Okay, so the main visible job for the BRM is to deal with the unlikely event of any dispute. How often is it that he actually gets the impression that either party, the bookmaker or the punter, is actually trying it on?
Thankfully, it's very, very rare. I don't think anybody intends to try it on. I don't think anybody truly means to take advantage of the other party. Bookmakers, in my experience, are honourable people, and they're just trying to run a decent, honest business. Most of them are just small family businesses, and they run them with integrity. We do find occasionally that customers will have a ticket that says, for instance, £202 each way, when they've actually probably only had £2 each way, or possibly £20 each way, and that's what we call elephant thumbs syndrome, where the bookmaker has put the bet into the computer, they've caught the wrong key on the computer, and they've caught the 2 at the same time as the 20, so they've made £202 each way. And you know, we often, well, not often, but we occasionally see those coming up as a dispute, where the customer would come up and say he had £200 each way for himself and £2 each way for his wife, for instance. That would be a common thing, and generally they send somebody else up to collect these tickets. So the ring managers are quite wise to these things, and of course it's a bit naughty of the customers to do that. Thankfully, it's very rare. You know, we record the number of disputes that we have each day at the races. Bearing in mind there's probably 30 million bets placed per annum, so 600,000 bets placed per week on average. The number of disputes, the number of problems is minuscule compared to that overall total. So I think that's evidence in itself that neither party is trying to do anything untoward.
When you do get the odd occasion that a punter is obviously trying it on and he's digging his heels in and he won't let it go, I mean, strictly speaking, that's fraud. Would it ever be escalated and the police called?
Yeah, sometimes the ring managers will call the police if there are any police on the racecourse, or they'll call security and tell the customer that they're going to be reported to the police. It is obtaining money by deception or something along those lines to try and claim winnings that aren't yours. But as I say, it happens very, very rarely. So it's not something that would happen on a daily basis by any means.
We've already mentioned that bookmakers by nature are honest, honourable people, but have there ever been any bad eggs that have sort of lost their pitches or been asked to leave for any misdemeanours?
No, I think people have made mistakes. Most of the time, for instance, offering the wrong place terms would have been a common thing which the betting managers would have spotted in the betting ring. So going a fifth 1 2 3 instead of a quarter 1 2 3 4, or a fifth 1 2 3 4, whatever it may be. So there have been people who've made mistakes, but I think after investigation those mistakes have been found to be honest mistakes. So yes, some bookmakers have been reprimanded for going against the rules, if you like, for breaching the regulations, but it's very, very rare. It's probably 2 or 3 over the last 5 years, I would say.
Okay, so these days it's a fairly high-tech environment, at least it looks it on the racecourse, compared to even when I started in the late 80s. They were still using the same techniques as they had done for 100 years. So bookmakers have embraced technology to a certain extent, but I think you've got a few ideas what they could be doing, you'd like to see them do in the future.
Well, of course, back in 1998, when the NJPC took over, everybody used a ledger and a pencil, if you like, and they marked up their odds on a chalkboard. What happened in those early days of the NJPC were a number of changes were driven through, and that included computerisation of the betting ring, because it was felt that issuing a receipt with all the details of the name of the horse, the odds, the stake, the potential return, all of those crucial details, it's a lot easier for the customer to see what they've had than back in the days when they were given a card, which of course didn't contain any of those specific receipt details. So lots of those things were driven through at the time, and from computerising the operation came the LED boards, which you'll see now commonly on every racecourse, on every pitch near enough, where the bookmakers could display the odds via the computer, via this shiny board, if you like. And that, of course, again, that's evolving, because there is now, if you go racing regularly, you'll perhaps see them. There are new types of board which offer different functionality. They're more interactive. You can get shapes and videos and that sort of thing on them. And I think that sort of progression will happen organically over the next few years. But the thing that concerns me is that, and I'm no longer young, unfortunately, but it seems that young people increasingly favour a cashless society. And of course, most of the business in the betting ring is done in cash. Sometimes when you go racing on a premier race day, the queue for the cash machine is 50, 60 yards long, because people just don't go around, or young people don't go around with cash anymore. So they get to the racecourse and all of a sudden they realise that they need cash to bet with most bookmakers. Some bookmakers are starting to have debit card machines and debit card capabilities, but at the moment it's awfully slow to process that, and some of the banks aren't very easy to tie down in terms of getting those agreements set up. So what I'd like to see, and it's easy for me to say and not easy for anybody to do, I'd love to see perhaps an app, maybe an on-course app that customers could load up on their phone before they go racing. They could put a sum of money into their account and then somehow flash their phone under some sort of reader on the bookmaker's joint. It would be instant, it would be quick. They would say, number 2, £20, flash the phone, and £20 is taken from their account. And if it wins, they could take the phone up and flash the phone under again, and the winnings will be added to their account, or perhaps they could be paid in cash if they prefer. And I think that sort of thing, it's not going to happen in the next year. It might not happen in the next couple of years, but I just can't see it not happening in the next 20 or 30 years. And I always think if you can see something on the horizon, it's best to deal with it now, rather than waiting for that horizon to get ever closer. And I appreciate, for the bookmakers out there, this is not easy. It requires investment of money, it requires somebody to manage the project, it requires somebody to oversee it. It's not easy, and I'm not suggesting it is, but I do think that sort of thing is a thought for the future.
Okay, you need to send your boys for some new training then if all that comes in. So what would be, as a final thing, what would be the best thing about when you go off on the race course? I know you're at the sharp end as well. What is the best thing about your job?
Well, no 2 days are the same. It's great dealing with, we have lots of good contacts with the race courses. We work very closely with the race courses to make sure that everything's in order on their tracks on the day. We work with the bookmakers as well to make sure that everything's working well. liaise with the people at the Gambling Commission who in the betting team, who are very professional and always very capable of helping with issues. And it's just a varied job where you can get on in your own time, in your own way, and there's a mutual respect, I think, between all parties.
Brilliant. Tim Moore, thank you very much.
Thank you.